Everybody, my name is Persephone Diaz, and this is going to be a presentation on the goth music genre and subculture and the accompanying fashion trends that came along with the subculture. Now, what is goth music to be specific? Goth music or also known as goth rock, it emerged as a genre slash subculture in the late 1970s in the United Kingdom. It had emerged from post-punk itself, and it may have been tentatively credited to the influence of the band Joy Division, though this isn't 100% confirmed. But this subgenre of rock is characterized by its emphasis on the moody and the melancholy in the lyrics and the mood it creates in the music. As goth music, in its more traditional characteristics, it could be identified also by emphases on heavy bass lines and keyboards that emphasize atmosphere. And if you want to identify a goth fan, they can typically be found as aligned with a more rebellious way of life, especially in aesthetics, as well as being politically left-leaning members of alternative subcultures outside of just the goth subculture. And also pictured here is the logo for Susie and the Banshees, one of their albums. This is the previous lineup for The Cure, and also the album cover for Joy Division's Unknown Pleasures. Now, as for goth trends, when you want to identify the more traditional goth look or trad goth kind of fashion, you could find some of the following characteristics to be able to be utilized in expected or stereotypical goth looks, such as inspired by Susie Sue of Susie and the Banshees or Robert Smith of The Cure. So black is often the go-to characteristic of color for goth looks to some capacity. This is meant to be a reflection of the moody and melancholic aesthetic. And flowing black clothes with self-made alterations are typically something that was expected of earlier goth people. Black and colorful eyeliner is also a major aesthetic and makeup choice. Very teased, and dyed black hair is an option, though it's not necessarily a requirement to be goth or have a goth aesthetic in fashion. Black or red lipstick are typically the go-tos. Sometimes white foundation, though, again, this is not a requirement. It's just an aesthetic to the makeup. And other aspects could be expected from the subculture of Victorian mourning fashion as another go-to, fishnet stockings, lace, and just all these modern fashions coming together with prior historical fashions to make what is known as goth fashion. And who are goths in particular for their not just aesthetics, but their demographics? With the original goth scene having come to life in the 1970s to the 1980s, the goth demographic actually encompasses multiple generations, including younger baby boomers all the way to Generation Z and so forth, on to younger generations today. Also, controversially, unfortunately, the goth scene has faced historical and current backlash for a widely white demographic, though members of different racialized groups and ethnicities do encompass the goth music subculture as well. There is still controversy in this regard because there are aspects of certain members expressing more white-centered ideologies. But ultimately, if a person wants to be part of the goth subculture, they just have to be listening to and enjoying goth music to some degree. It doesn't have to be the only music that they listen to. They just have to listen to goth music. That's pretty much the only requirement, as well as sharing also the political leanings of the goth subculture itself. So this is what encompasses the goth demographic in the more general sense. I've also included some types of goth aesthetics, so it's not just trad goths or the stereotypical Susie Sue, Robert Smith, Bauhaus kind of goth. There are different types, anywhere from mall goths to new goths, pastel goths, cyber goths, Victorian goths, and so forth. There are gothic aesthetics that have been incorporated, obviously, into the goth movement and the goth subculture. So some included here are the new goths, mall goths, pastel goths, and cyber goths, just to name a few examples to see how the gothic kind of spooky aesthetic in this musical subculture has carried forth into the modern day. Included here are my resources. So thank you so much for listening to this presentation on what the goth subculture and music is, and as well as how it's created its own little pocket of fashion.